Morning, sunshine.
In an age of lawlessness and despair, the empire of man lay in ruins, torn asunder by civil war, and racked by famine and plague. Desperate, unscrupulous men deserted the temples of their fathers and gathered in forbidden cults, seeking the favor of the dark gods. And so it was, in the year 2301, that a Kurgan warlord named Asavar Kul united the savage tribes of the Chaos Wastes and made war upon the realms of men. The invaders entered the distant northern kingdom of Kislev and sacked its largest city, Prague. They sacrificed its people to their dark gods, and any who managed to flee were driven into the freezing wilderness. The Empire seemed powerless to stop the Chaos Horde, and many feared that the end of the world was at hand. But in the Empire's darkest hour, a nobleman from the south named Magnus rallied the people of the Empire to resist the invaders, uniting the warring Elector Counts in the process. The Imperial army marched to the rescue of the Kislevite capital, fighting Kul's army in a massive battle outside the city walls. Joined by mighty heroes from all across the land, Magnus defeated Kul in single combat, and the Chaos Horde was scattered to the winds. Blessed by the gods and heralded as the true Emperor, Magnus returned to Nuln in triumph. But even as the old world celebrated Magnus's victory, the dark gods were planning their revenge. There was a time when an emperor ruled in Nuln, and the empire was at peace, but that was long before you were born. Soldiering is the only life you've ever known. Your father was a swordsman in service to the Elector Count of Reichland. By the time you were 15, he was dead, and his sword and armor passed to you. You've lost count of the number of battles you fought. Some were victories, others defeats. Most were fought over the same barren hills and empty villages, year after year. You rose through the ranks, replacing men who'd fallen along the way. Then came the news of the Chaos Invasion. Panicked Reichlanders spoke of the end of the world, and you feared they were right. With the Empire divided, who could stand against Kul and his horde? But then a nobleman from the old imperial capital of Nuln stepped into the breach. His name was Magnus, and he called upon the warring Elector Counts to stand as one and drive back the Chaos Horde. You expected no one to listen, but this time was different. Magnus's message spread like wildfire across the Empire. Within weeks, you and your company were on the march, joining the growing army as it headed north. Not even a lifetime of battles could prepare you for the nightmare that waited at Kislev. Just when all seemed lost, Magnus and his knights launched a desperate charge against the Chaos Warlord and his bodyguards. Surrounded, you and your men held back the horde until Asavar Kul had fallen. It was the company's greatest victory, and its last. By the time the battle was over, you were the only one left. Once the dead were buried, you accepted Magnus's invitation to join his retinue and return with him to Nuln. After the horrors you witnessed at Kislev, defending the Empire from its foes is the only battle worth fighting anymore. Ulthuan are masters of the winds of magic, and none are more renowned than the High Princes of Safri. You were born to a life of great power and privilege, destined one day to take your place among the archmages at the Tower of Hoeth. The arts of magic came easily to you, but as your skill grew, so did your arrogance. A rivalry with another student at the tower spun out of control, culminating in a magical duel that left your rival dead and one of your teachers crippled. As punishment for your recklessness and disobedience, you were banished from Ulfborn until you had atoned for your crimes. Cast out with nothing but a few magical tomes and the clothes on your back, you journeyed to the old world in search of adventure. At first, the news of the Chaos invasion meant little to you. Your people had been fighting the Dark Gods and their armies for thousands of years. But then you learned that Teclis, Hoth's greatest living archmage, had come to the old world to offer his support to Magnus and the Empire. Believing your moment of redemption was at hand, you rushed north to join the Imperial army. Magnus accepted your offer at once, glad for another mage to battle cool sorcerers. As the day of battle dawned, you were determined to prove your worth or die in the attempt. While Teclis shielded Magnus from the enemy's spells, you fought cool sorcerers and demons with all the skill at your command. By the time the battle was over, you were a hero. Magnus offered you a place in his retinue, a position of tremendous power and influence. Such trifles meant nothing to you. All that mattered was the opinion of Teclis, who could end your bitter exile with just a few words. And so you have chosen to travel to Nuln with the Imperial army, determined to win the favor of the High Lawmaster at any cost. If that meant protecting Magnus from his enemies and rebuilding the ravaged human empire, then that is what you will do. As a young dwarf in the great city of Karazakarak, you were taught the legends of your ancestors. Ever since, you have longed for the day when you could win fame and glory of your own and restore the luster of your much-diminished clan. When High King Thorgrim Grudgebearer called for warriors to aid Kislev during the Great Chaos Invasion, you were one of the first to pledge your service. Along with your father and your younger brothers, you left Karazakarak behind, marching eagerly to war. It wasn't long before you were in the thick of the fight, trapped inside the city of Kislev. You and your kin fought fiercely against the Chaos Horde. When Kul's first assault breached the city gates, it was the dwarfs who led the counterattack that drove the enemy back and saved the day. Your fearlessness in battle earned you the name Axebiter, and the Kislevites hailed you as a hero. But the more you tasted of glory, the more you began to crave it. When Magnus's army arrived outside the city, your thirst for immortal fame ended in tragedy. Leading a force of 300 dwarfs, you tried to fight your way out of the city to join the Imperials and fight Kul's army together. It was a deed worthy of legend, but not even Grimnir himself could have fought his way through so vast a horde. Your reckless charge was driven back at a bitter cost. Half of the valiant dwarfs that had followed you were slain, including your father and all of your brothers. Racked with guilt over the deaths of your kin, you swore powerful oaths of vengeance against the dark powers. And so you chose the path of the Slayer, seeking redemption through a glorious death in battle. When the final battle outside the city walls began, you went forth alone to find Asavar Kul and challenge him to single combat. You carved a bloody path through the enemy, reaching the Chaos Lord in time to see him fall to Magnus and his knights. After the battle, you accepted an invitation from Magnus to join his retinue and return with him to Nuln. As far as you were concerned, the new Emperor owed you a glorious death, and with many of Asavar Kul's champions still alive, you could be sure Magnus would not lack for foes. Is one of tireless service to the great forest of Athelloren, protecting it from those who would do it harm. Sometimes, however, it happens that a young Azrai is born with an urge to wander. An overpowering curiosity and a desire for adventure that will not be denied. Known as the Windborn, these wood elves can be vexing to their elders, but have the potential to become great rangers if their adventurous nature is properly harnessed. And so young Windborn are given leave to wander the wide world for a short period of time, no more than 100 years, to see all they can of the wider world before returning to the Athelloren and taking up their duties. You had been wandering the old world for little more than a year when you heard the news of Asavar Kul's invasion. A human named Magnus was raising an army to drive back the Horde. It sounded like an epic adventure, the very thing you'd left the Athel Loren to find. And so you crossed the depths of the Great Brightfall to find the Imperial army. That night, you slipped into the army camp and made your way to Magnus's tent, where you offered your services as a scout. Impressed by your skill, Magnus accepted and made you a part of his growing retinue. Thus began your first great adventure, guiding the growing human army across the Empire and into the frozen lands of the North. The great battle outside the walls of Kislev was more terrible than you could have imagined. You kept close to Magnus during the fight and joined him in the heroic charge that slew the Chaos Lord and turned the tide of the battle. After the battle was won and the dead put to rest, you returned with Magnus to the city of Nome, where a hero's welcome awaited you. But the noise and bustle of the human city has begun to wear on you, and the urge to wander has taken hold again. As the sun sets over Nome, you wonder if the time has come to leave the city and seek a new adventure elsewhere. It was an age of lawlessness and despair, a time of dark magic, treachery, and war. It is a night made for witchery and evil deeds, and across the city, guardsmen clutch their weapons tightly and count the hours until the dawn. Sleep is hard to come by on a night such as this. The air is tense, and memories of the battle at Kislev leave you restless and on edge. Suddenly, a peal of thunder shatters the stillness, followed by a howling wind that shakes the tower to its foundations. Foul magic curdles the air, and screams echo in the courtyard outside. The tower is under attack.